Welcome, Atlanta United family, to another episode of Resurge Despite ATL. Here with James, one of our co-hosts, and you can follow him at ATL UTD James. You can follow him on Twitter. Also, our guest for this week, we have Sam Jones from the Striker. You can follow him on Twitter as well as J underscore Sam Jones, and you can follow his content. He's always posting recent Atlanta United news, transfer rumors, basically any Atlanta United content. You can follow him for any updates. Sam, and obviously, as we've all pretty much seen on Twitter, uh, we had some like tragic news. Obviously, Anton Walsh, he was involved in a boating accident apparently in Miami. And I mean, not only for Atlanta United, but he was now playing for Charlotte, and there has been a lot of support, and on social media. Obviously, it's something that you don't expect. Obviously he was a young guy, 25 years old. He got the captain at Atlanta United. Just for a young career, it's he did a lot, for the teams that he was there. And something that really stuck out to me, and the comments, even from former teammates and stuff, it's like the leadership, that how the guy, like basically carried himself around the locker room. I don't know if there's anything in specific, Sam, that you have that kind of from if you had the opportunity to talk to him, which I'm pretty sure you did. Something that kind of stood out from from him, or just a particular experience that you had with him.
Yeah. Hope you'll kind of forgive me here as I kind of work through this. I'm not sure I've necessarily processed it up until now, and it may take a moment to do that. But Anton was, as journalists, we get like brief snapshots of people, right? We don't know how people act. We don't know how people treat other folks, other than the brief kind of snippets we get of these players, and we kind of make assessments based on that. And sometimes they're heavy-handed assessments, and it's too much, and it's not who the person actually is. But in our interactions with Anton, first and foremost, he always treated us well. Sometimes players don't do that. It's not a given to treat people well, especially when you're seen as kind of the enemy in the media, right? But it wasn't only that. You could tell that his teammates, it didn't change with his teammates. He treated everyone well, right? He always had this very warm and funny sense of humor about him. I think it's very telling today to see the reaction from not only the folks in Atlanta, who knew him for 3 seasons, but from the folks in Charlotte who only got to know him for about a year. It clearly became a fan favorite. Clearly became a presence in that locker room very quickly, despite having some injury issues over the course of that year. And it's difficult to process that he's just not with us anymore. Like you said, 25 years old. The team was down in Miami training, from my understanding, if you're wondering why he was in Miami in the first place. But, a recent father, loved Atlanta. I think that was pretty apparent every time we kind of talked to him. He left Atlanta and went to Portsmouth, and could have stayed there. Could have gone to another English team, But he told me and Joe Patrick from around the game a while back that he started missing Atlanta. He started missing the city. He started missing being a part of Atlanta United. And something he mentioned pretty regularly was just wanting to be there when the good times came back around again. Obviously, he never got that shot with going to Charlotte and everything like that, but it clearly was a place that meant a lot to him. And I think anyone who has followed this team from the very beginning knows what kind of figure Atlanta or Anton Walks came within the Atlanta United fan base. I mean, for I mean, you think Bobby Dodd Stadium, part of that is thinking about Anton Walker suddenly becoming a fullback out of nowhere and scoring against San Jose on July 4th and everything like that, and having big blonde hair at the time. He's a critical part of this club's history, and today hurt. Today hurt.
Yeah, I don't have much to say either. It's so sad. He's a great guy, great player.
Yeah, really I mean, something that is going to be, or has kind of been mentioned around on Twitter. It's if there's going to be anything, between both fan bases, whenever either Charlotte plays in Atlanta or Atlanta plays in Charlotte, if there's going to be some type of, moment of silence, or maybe in the 5th minute they'll, do the round of applause or something like that, just something, so they can commemorate, somebody that, for both franchises, as young as they are, that it was a vital piece, for them. So, I mean, all we can say is, hopefully, for the family, for everybody that was, I don't know if anybody else was involved. I don't think, I read the newspaper that mentioned it, and I don't think it mentioned anything, of anybody else being involved. But I mean, for, Anton's family, I mean, I think, tough times, and, just have to, try to make it through. And I mean, for Atlanta, I mean, overall, I think it's been a pretty rough 24 hours, not only with this news that came out early this morning, but it's been official that Josef Martinez is now no longer part of Atlanta United, and ironically signed with, Inter Miami, which has been, more up to this point, had been the only club that he was linked to. But there was some, some stuff that came out that Charlotte and Nashville also made some pretty interesting bids for him, and I mean, he decided to go to Miami. I don't know how true, or how reliable that that may be, but um yeah, I mean, I saw it coming. I think pretty much by, by the whole chicken and rice incident, pretty much everybody knew that it was like, Joseph was pretty much out, of the club, or kind of being pushed out in some way or another. I don't know, whichever way you want to see it. Some guys are, pro Joseph and all this. I mean, you have to be realistic. I mean, for him to be, a DP, I mean, he was just not contributing enough for the team, and maybe if he was able to bring down his salary, come into a Tamsy or something. I mean, there was a lot of things that just fell apart. That I feel like just it didn't have to get to that point. I mean, even with everything that he said right before he left that last game, like, go talk to Pineda and Bocanegra. There, like, I mean, it's stuff like that that just, I think the fan base is more frustrated on the fact that how and where he's leaving than, the fact that he's leaving overall. It's just the circumstances that came with it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's one of those things that I think, covering the team day to day, I am a little too close to it sometimes, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this has been coming for months. Why is everyone so upset? But if I take just even a step back and think about it, right? Like, this is the greatest player in club history. This is the player that, if anyone gets a statue out of all of this, it's going to be Josef Martinez, right? It's tough to process for folks, and I totally understand. But if we're talking about a roster building perspective, if we're talking about getting Atlanta United back to a place where the team functions as a cohesive unit and is effective as an MLS team, you have to go forward in MLS. And Ariel kind of mentioned it. Just him occupying a DP spot was the big issue here, right? Like, if it's a non-salary cap league and you can just keep him on the roster and maybe, I don't know, maybe go to therapy or something like that and work out whatever was going on between Boca and Pineda and Joseph and whatever weird triangle that was. You could sort all that out. You could wait it out. You could give him this last year on his contract. You could just kind of let it be. And you know what? Maybe he comes good. Maybe he gets healthy in a way that we don't really expect. But as far as this particular move, right, from an objective standpoint, this was the correct move for Atlanta United. Josef just wasn't offering anything beyond being able to find the net in substitute situations at this point, right? He ended up this year in the first percentile for tackles compared to forwards in the rest of the league. His running stats were the worst in the league. He just simply wouldn't move, you know? A lot of numbers indicate that he lost his explosiveness. He lost that dynamism. He was never a guy that was sprinting 90 minutes, but he lost all that dynamism. And, you know, that's critical for what you want out of Josef Martinez. This was a player that just wasn't going to get back to scoring 20, 25 times a year. And if you're a team with ambitions like Atlanta United, you can't have that kind of player in a DP spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sad. And to your point about running, I remember the last goal I saw in person of his was against DC United, where Brooks Lennon had to literally put the ball right on his head for him to move. But yeah, I mean, he gave us the star, you know, it's on my jersey, all of that. He's in the rafters now, mostly because the jersey's too small. But yeah, he's in the rafters with Kyle Korver. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. But, you know, I'm excited to follow his journey in Miami, and hopefully he does well, except for certain dates.
Exactly. And that's something to consider too. He did end up in what's essentially the ideal spot for him. He just had a kid.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about this multiple times in his press conference. Newborn son, came premature, has been in the hospital in Miami, I think, for a little while anyway. And that's where Josef has been. If you've been like paying attention on social media, that's where Josef has been for a lot of the time here. The writing was kind of on the wall here. Secretly, covertly, I guess you want to put it that way. So for Atlanta, one, to be able to work out a deal for him to get there in the first place, and two, for Miami to be interested, it's kind of really good business on Atlanta's part. You know, they ended up not being able to work out a trade and get some GAM or whatever for it, right? But you still get some relief from Inter Miami paying a portion of the buyout, and you clear that DP spot. Right. Yep. And that's huge. Josef ends up where he pretty much wants to be at this point. And I think for all sides, it got to the right answer, even if it was really clumsy how they did it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's probably like, if he could choose anywhere to go, I mean, it would be Miami. I don't know him, but I mean, that's probably true. But
can I ask you guys a question?
Let's go.
There's been a lot of talk about this, and I've seen a bunch of different numbers thrown out. I'm gonna put it at 12. Does Josef score more than 12 goals this year for Inter Miami?
I think that's hard to predict because there's so many outside factors other than him. You know, it's difficult, and Miami they look pretty decent as well. This year, I can't predict it, but I'll go with yes.
Okay,
for fun, but I mean,
yeah, I say he goes above 12 as well. I mean, not just MLS. I mean, leagues. I say overall, he hits somewhere between 15, 18. That's my guess for him overall. I mean, for my. I mean, honestly, I mean, given the fact that, you know, I get it, you know, he gave everything to Atlanta United, literally like everything. But I honestly hope that that's not the case. I mean, I think hopefully, you know, he has that mentality where he's able to pick himself up, because also I think it kind of comes down to like a mental aspect. I don't know so much of the physical aspect as well. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge. I mean, but you know, in my point of view, I think, you know, the mental aspect, you know, for Josef, I think it's what's kind of blocking him from kind of getting back to, you know, something. He's probably not gonna make those explosive runs all the time, but there's certain times where, you know, he can be that dangerous player, but he's just not there mentally. I feel like he's afraid like he's gonna end up re-injuring himself or something, having a serious setback. That's just me, honestly.
Yeah, that's totally fair. There's like the nightmare scenario, right, where he like starts hitting the gym and like deletes all of his social media and like gets super focused, like it's after a breakup, right? And like starts killing it. I think that would stress everyone out if it happened, but I think I still want him to do very well. I'm interested to see if it happens because he goes to Inter Miami. Miami has a DP striker named Leo Campana who did very well last year, and it could work out to where they go with two strikers. I'm interested to see how Phil Neville actually wants to use him, but in the end, the broader point here is I think it was best for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, James, just
let me
hold
talk.
the thought
Let me
real quick,
talk.
though.
Can I finish this?
Go ahead.
Just a little fun, but you would think he feels more comfortable, but I mean it's 1 year and an option, right? Is that the contract?
That's what CL Merlot reported it.
Pressure, and that's difficult. And you know what? I'm gonna have fun. I feel like this is a little bit of a Cam Newton type situation where he had that injury after the hype. I feel like it's actually pretty close to like exactly like Cam Newton, but Cam Newton didn't really put it away starting in New England. But it's gonna be interesting. It's definitely exciting, but I mean it could go so many ways, but we'll have to see.
Now, Riddle has a comment that's kind of like going towards what I was about to ask. With the toxic environment. Joseph has a history of pretty much, having some type of encounter with every manager that he's had so far. Phil Neville said something last year about, having to deal with big personalities and, it. How far or how long does it take for that to happen?
If they don't win games, it'll happen.
Yeah, I think that's just so inherently baked in the nature of Josef Martinez, right? And everyone tolerates it because it's what he needs to deliver. Sometimes to call it toxicity maybe feels like a step too far. Some folks would call it passion. Everyone I've ever talked to who's played with Joseph is no one said like fuck that guy, like everyone's like I love Joseph, so if you've got like a crazy friend who's just a little too intense but like still will have your back every single time, that's Joseph, right? And that carries value in a locker room. It obviously carries more value when the team is winning and when he's playing well. But I don't know. I wouldn't call it toxic necessarily. Now, the point you bring up about it potentially deteriorating like immediately totally could happen. I want to believe that Joseph is like taking some time and is like ready for a new start and all that kind of thing. But if he's not starting and Phil Neville says something goofy, I mean, it could happen.
Yep, that's the kryptonite. I mean, that's what we can be looking back on and saying, yeah, this is why we got rid of him. But if he goes on a tear, it happens. But,
and I do want to point out too that like even last year, even with the 1-game suspension and all the other nonsense going on, all this stuff with Joseph maybe not going through the everyday habits that the rest of the team was and putting forth kind of that like role model set up for some of the younger players and everything like that, maybe just not being an active presence at the training ground. For all of that, the team still seemed to really care about him. They still defended him, right? I mean, there's the comments from Juanjo Parada after the game that he suspended, that they're still, playing together as a team. They're playing for Joseph. They're playing for each other. And everything is still, about getting Atlanta United to the proper place, right? So it never got to the point, even last year, where folks were angry with Joseph or upset. I think there's like a level of understanding that like, oh, if I tore my ACL and had to get like 6 separate surgeries after the fact and it stopped me from being the player I wanted to be, I would be extremely frustrated too. So I think there was a lot of empathy in that. So I I think the folks in Miami will understand and tolerate it to some extent, and it shouldn't get too bad in theory.
Something. I mean, there was some pretty heavy takeaways from Carlos Bocanegra's comments that he said about it could have been nasty, basically. How the ownership
Kind of
handled the
valid.
situation. I don't know if it's just him not being properly prepared, to be in front of camera, or it was just I don't know. I honestly at this point I don't know what to expect or what to really take away from it. I just don't know. I don't know.
It was weird, right? Like it's like someone come up to you and saying, "I could have punched you in the face," and it's like, "Wait, what? You would have? Why?" It was weirdly framed, but to set it up a little bit, like the framing for everything yesterday was, "Oh, we the team, we did right by Joseph," right? And that's the PR stance of the club. That's what the way they're going to approach this the rest of the time. And there's probably a decent bit of truth in that, right? Like they probably did say, okay, where is a place where we can make this work? And Miami was definitely one of those places, you know? So again, I think there's some truth in it. To frame it that way, like, oh, we could have been nasty, was odd, really, really weird. But at the same time, I don't think it was necessarily like something harmful in the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And obviously, I think that Joseph somewhere or another will be involved. I don't want to say coaching wise because I don't think that he, or maybe I don't know, but realistically, I think that he'll somewhere or another be still involved with Atlanta United in the upcoming years once he retires. I think that he's definitely the sports figure, soccer wise talking, in Atlanta that everybody looks up to, and will look up to, in the upcoming years. I mean, it's just no other player is gonna. I mean, there's been talks with other guys that we've had with Tyler Pilgrim from DSS that it's you're not gonna bring in a Joseph 2.0. It's just not gonna happen. You're putting so much pressure on the next person, whether they're a big talent, whether they're a guy that has 200, 300 career goals. They're not going to come and score and break the MLS scoring record. Basically the second season they come into the league, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and to Carlos's credit, like he actively avoided using the word replacement yesterday. Like he said, I don't want to use the word replacement. He stumbled a couple of times, like, oh wait, not replacement, not replacement. It's not going to happen because, like you said, Joseph was like a unicorn. Like he was a winger who came in from Torino, who no one knew anything about, and suddenly he's the best striker in MLS history, and people want statues built of him. That's like a wild coincidence, right? Like how does that even happen? So to think that the next guy is going to come in and do anything similar is not going to happen at all.
And to Riddle's question about Felipe and the leaks and whatever, I kind of started that argument as a troll to troll Felipe, and it totally backfired. People got really mad at me, but they didn't see through it. But
wait, what's happening here?
Oh, it was just that the Felipe leak. I kind of trolled and said it was all Felipe's fault, but like it's not. I got
no, yeah, that had no effect on no. I want to say I'm not sure who had that first. To be totally honest, it might have been Felipe, but
I think
did
it was
not impact anything.
Felipe like got the leak that he wasn't going to return in 2022, and like
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, this was.
I had too much fun with that. But.
It's a good bit. Yeah. But no, this.
I mean, when you look at it, the surface, you're like, yeah, but when you're inside, you're like, yeah, it would have been the same thing. I don't think you could harness some gam out of that. No chance. But
I mean, Now, somewhat, going into the same subject with the DP striker situation. Now, there's a lot of situations that that the team is in right now with getting rid of certain contracts. Now basically gotten rid of that dead weight. Now you have the DP, a DP position. Whether it happens this summer or by the end of the year, Amada will most likely be out of the team. I feel like, um, now, I honestly don't think that they're gonna start or they're gonna say something like, all right, we're gonna build around Almada, try to because he's only here he's only gonna be here for so long. I mean, and I don't know if they're just gonna bring in a striker or I mean just opinions on whether they bring somebody in to build around like a like I mean who can we talk about, like Cucho Hernandez type of guy, or Chicho Arango, guys like that that have played in the or that are proven goal scorers basically. But to my point, to the point that I'm trying to make is like, what kind of profile striker does Atlanta really need, or what do they need to look for? Because there's so many aspects that they can look at. They could look at goal scored. They could look at the just him being able to find good positions to get him in between defenders, or just I don't know. There's just so many aspects to look at it.
Yeah, like ideally you'd want like everything, right? Go ahead, James.
Yeah. Ideally.
I just want someone that's tall. I think that would fit. I mean, at least the 2022 play style. I mean, get on top of the crosses we spam to nobody, But
yeah. Are you stumping for Olivier Giroud then? Is that what's happening here?
That's a summer thing.
Well, see, that brings up a good point, though.
Do that. We would never do Giroud.
It would be out of character. It would be out of character. Joshua makes a good point here. They want another Cisneros, but better. And I think that's kind of where I'm leaning as well, to the extent that like you want someone who is going to press, who's going to make runs, and who's going to move off the ball, right? The idea, I think, here is to get a high floor guy, if that makes sense. Someone who will come in and there's like a set floor of like, okay, he's going to get you 15 and 5, but he's also going to like press like hell and do a lot of things defensively that the team really struggled with last year. Because Atlanta United last year were the worst pressing team in the league. Just terrible. They were awful.
They were so bad.
It's something that got kind of pressing. Like...
That's
exactly right.
It wasn't real press.
Exactly right.
Nick just killed me with this comment.
Hey, Phoenix Rise. Is he still in Phoenix? I don't know where he is.
I want the guy to be tall and win headers and stuff. I don't, because especially when you lock up Brooks Lennon, someone's scrappy. I don't care if you can score from outside the box or whatever. Just kick it in the goal and stuff. I mean,
yeah, like the ideal person for me is like a chaos merchant, right? Yes. Like I just want him to come in and ruin stuff, throw his body around and make the runs and get to the near post and just wreak havoc, essentially, right? Because I think the idea here, maybe
false nine Rossetto, man. That's the plan.
Oh God, I hate it.
Oh,
I hate it.
Lord.
Maybe he can become a real 9 on the back of his shirt.
Wow, that nightmares. Look, I think this could be really interesting because one, I think we might be waiting till summer. I think that's something to kind of think about, especially with Garth, is that Garth's MO throughout his entire time in Seattle, and to some extent, from my understanding, Real Salt Lake too, has been to find the best possible person, even if that takes some time, and even if that means waiting till summer to gather more information and to get in the right situation for the player to come. So that might be something everyone needs to be prepared for. But if we're also looking at Garth's striker signings, right? Like we're talking about Raul Ruidiaz, who came in when he was probably 27, 28, on the older side, right? And I think that's something that we haven't necessarily seen from Atlanta United's DPs. You can look at another Seattle DP, João Paulo, came in when he was 28, 29, has been probably the best midfielder in MLS when healthy. right? Like
Yeah.
that is something that could be totally different and unique for Atlanta United in these coming months that we haven't really seen, but is really necessary for a team that felt extremely young last year. But what that does, again, I talked about having a high floor. That's kind of what I mean. Like a guy who has proven experience and a proven record of goal scoring and making positive things happen that they know they're going to get a lot out of, no matter what. There's not the kind of like, oh, well, will they want they of a Barco and of even an Almada, right?
Yep. I mean, oof, it's gonna be difficult if it's summer though. Do you think we would have in line a striker anyway this window?
I think
But
I think
maybe
they're
not
gonna have
Caliber.
to somebody,
Well, yeah.
right? Like as much as I love Jackson, I think even he would agree he's probably not quite starting caliber yet in MLS. So I think we're talking maybe a league minimum guy. Maybe they like
Mhm.
sneak in and grab Will Bruin for a league minimum deal. You
Ooh,
know, he hasn't necessarily produced a ton as of late, but could he be a stopgap for a few months? Maybe. Obviously,
yeah.
Gonzalo and Garth know him. He's a free agent. Other than that, maybe a trade somewhere. I don't really know, but I think they'll get some kind of veteran presence in there before the
Yeah.
season starts.
I mean, Zilf was saying that when we were chatting today. He's like, Will Bruin is coming, and every single day it makes more and more sense, and it's unsettling. But
Go
yeah, I
check
don't
out.
know.
Go check out.
I mean,
It's curious.
with the goals that Garth is trying to set and all of that, it just seems really shaky right now. Which he
Mm-hmm.
obviously said home playoff game, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not currently moved, but there's still a lot of time left,
Well, that's
obviously.
just it.
But
You have time and you have a lot of cap space, right? Like something they've accomplished that I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh God, all the players are leaving. Maybe don't think about it that way. Maybe think about all the money and cap space that's leaving, right? When you
yep,
lose an Alan Franco and Marcelo Moreno, um, when you get rid of Joseph, right? And we get rid of Emerson Hyndman as well, who you somehow like Jedi mind tricked him into doing a mutual contract like buyout. I don't even know how they did that. That was amazing.
yeah, that's
So I mean,
great
at that
play.
point, you cleared like 3 million of cap space,
Oof.
right? Like,
Yep,
I mean, we're talking 3 or 4 starting caliber guys coming in
yep.
potentially. Right. And so we started thinking about that way and thinking about like, oh, well, we got rid of one person who was actually starting at the end of the year, and it was Alan Franco. Sylph, no. And it was Alan Franco who
I still rate him. I still rate him.
who
I'm
on
in the
his good
minority
days,
there.
absolutely. In the moments
His
where
good day.
he, I don't know, like chases
For
after
some
a defender
reason,
to the
like the word,
touchline.
for
After
some
George
reason, like
Campbell
the
told him
worst Alan
he needs
Franco
to
that I
go.
remember is like that 2022 game, Colorado, the second game of the season, where every single goal was on him. I'm like, Jesus Christ,
He
because like
forgot to jump in one goal. Like the ball came towards him and he went, oh shit, what do I do? Should I jump? No, I'll just stay right here. And Diego Rubio mossed him. Good Lord. So you got
and
rid of
Yeah.
that guy.
yeah, now yeah, you're talking about all the cat space that's and basically available and you know Lagerwey was basically able to put up a good team, like a good core team. Guys like Raul Ruidiaz, Nico Lodeiro, Stephen Fry, the Roldan brothers. Guys that complemented each other and stuff like that. And I feel like that's what he's hopefully gonna bring in here is be able to bring in those guys that are gonna those good pieces and there's been so much talk about the whole analytics department where they're trying to hire guys where it was just one person handling everything and one person can only do so much and I think that's eventually that's one of the things that is gonna lead to that change not probably this season but next season, I definitely think that Atlanta United is going to be competitive enough, roster wise, hopefully depth wise as well, where they could be fighting for U.S. Open Cup for MLS, like make a deep run. Like you just have to see Atlanta United being back in those terms where they're considered a big club, because honestly, I really don't think that they have been, a big club the last 3 years. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, signings, results, firing coaches, everything has just that's not what big clubs do.
I think
Yeah.
that's totally fair. Like totally fair. And you hit on a really good thing about the analytics department expanding and everything like that. And that's a pretty common theme for Garth in Seattle. He didn't have full control in Seattle, of course. He's only the GM. But still, he focused on analytics. He had Ravi Rabaneni with him and used him to kind of build out the analytics department there, and really kind of did that before a lot of MLS teams even jumped on it or even had the resources to do it, right? Because in MLS, that's where your advantages are. For all the talk of like Atlanta United's money and resources and everything like that, everyone's still playing with the same salary cap, right? And a lot of teams are getting 3 DPs and 3 U22s at this point. It's not quite the same as it was a few years ago where like, oh, wow, they have 3 DPs. What an amazing thing. That's a large chunk of the best teams in the league at this point. Even Philadelphia has 3 DPs now. So where do you gain advantages? You gain advantages with your infrastructure, with how you set up your academies, with how you set up your analytics departments, with how you set up your scouting department. And that's where you inject all your money into. Because in a salary cap league, if you miss, you get stuck with, Alan Franco on, a TAM deal, or Marcelo Moreno on a max TAM deal. Sorry, I'm still thinking about it. But if you miss, you're stuck. You're stuck. So if you invest your resources into the guys that will help you not miss, and you take the time to not miss, that's huge. And Atlanta United clearly has more resources to do that, other than maybe the Galaxy and LAFC at this point.
Yep.
And even that's arguable, right? So you're right. It's going to take time, but I think the payoff's going to be awesome.
Yep, but still, I mean, I keep regurgitating the same throw up every year, but in 37 days, when you're lining up to play San Jose, on paper, this team is a contender for the cup. And, it's not played on paper, but it's still a heck of a good team. And I'm so excited for Derek Etienne. That's going to be beautiful. I'm so hyped for him. And, whatever striker we get, I mean, who knows? Then we have the Pineda
Can I share
Renaissance.
my favorite Etienne stat right quick?
Oh,
So I have access to like the tracking stats and everything like that because I asked really nicely to someone, and it tracks off-ball runs, right? Derek Etienne last year was 11th in the league in off-ball runs among attacking players. Luis Araújo last year was 154th. So I think we're looking at a different profile of winger here, and one that's been very much needed. I'm really excited about Derek.
And maybe not having to stick Brooks London up there too.
Right, exactly. But I mean, I think you're right. Like, I think like the 11, the starting 11 right now is somewhere close. I don't think it's quite there to MLS Cup contender yet, but I think it's better than people are giving it credit for. Because I think last year's team was better than people gave it credit for, especially when you're looking at the underlying numbers and everything like that. You cut out a bunch of dumb mistakes at the beginnings of games, and you stop chasing the game every single time, right? Like, and you probably have enough firepower to pretty easily make the playoffs. You play even to your underlying numbers, your expected goals, you probably make the playoffs, right? So this team isn't that far away. And so having the ability to bring in like multiple starting caliber players right now, you add a center back, you bring in an 8, you bring in a starting striker. That's a damn good MLS team. That's your MLS Cup winner right there. That could totally happen.
Yeah, and back to the point of signing a striker in the summer. Do you think it's GG from Celtic or bust, and we wait, or?
I don't know. I've been following it just the same as everybody.
There's not much basis to that rumor, though. I feel like it's slipping every day. But
it's a weird one. It's one of those ones where it feels like maybe an agent is like sneaking a name in there just to kind of bump up some other prices, right? Because
it is fab.
Still feels like he's going. It is fab. It is fab. It still feels like he's going to Japan, but I don't know. Did y'all happen to catch what I thought was interesting? Did y'all catch the reported transfer price for him? Because it was like 4 million euros.
4 mil,
right? And when we're in that range, we might be talking a TAM guy there. So if they could get this guy on a TAM deal, I mean, that would be huge, right? To get the starting striker they want on a TAM deal and maybe spend DP money for a João Paulo kind of player in midfield.
Yeah.
That team kicks ass. That would be awesome.
Yeah, Eric Lopez price, right?
Eric Lopez price, exactly. God,
Perfect.
he will be gone. By the way, he's not been at training. I don't know. I think I reported that a while back, but he's not even at training.
I mean,
so
I've seen a lot around the league of players being out for personal reasons, but I feel like it's slipping with in terms of Lopez. But how does that work out? How does that go in terms of officially getting him off the roster?
It'll probably be a loan. To be totally honest, I don't think anyone's gonna pay a transfer for him. So a loan, and then you see out the rest of his contract, and then just kind of let that go quietly into the night like it never happened, as best you can.
Poor guy.
God, I know
he's useful, but he's not cheap. That's
no. Well, he is on the U22 deal,
Yeah.
So technically his budget charge is only like $200K, but I mean he's getting paid $550K a year to not play for Atlanta United. So it's a good gig if you can get it.
Yeah, I mean we've pretty much a lot of news on, or some news with the striker, but we still have a center back position that also needs to be filled. And there was some rumor about Alexander Callens, the Peruvian, who was a free agent, coming off of New York City. And I don't know how true it is as well that there was some talks about Girona FC, Barcelona, team in Barcelona from the first Spanish division that were interested in him. Apparently he was already up there, doing his medicals, and it was just a matter of time before he got cleared and made it official. So
it's kind of a super weird one there, because like Girona is like, they're in the same network of teams, that City football group, right? Manchester City on down.
All under the City group.
So why didn't they just like do that in the first place? I don't know.
Yep.
It seems odd that they had to go through the whole process. But Atlanta definitely interested. Right, exactly. Boca Juniors got involved, and yeah.
He wanted a DP deal. No, you think?
That's exactly right. And so like MLS rules, only NYCFC could have offered them that, from my understanding.
Not
so Atlanta probably went max TAM, and that's all they could do. So I don't know. Don't panic. They'll find a center back. Can I make one point about Georges GG real quick? Thought it was super interesting. If you look at his FBref numbers, his defensive stats were awesome. And it kind of fits in that thing I was talking about, like, someone needs to come in and be like an effective pressing force, right? And I think that might be an indication as well. He's 28, can press, can play defense, and also do all the striker things. And that might be the profile we're looking at for a striker going forward. That's it. That's all I got.
He scored a couple bicycle kicks too. That CMO. And like his goals were not beautiful, and that's what we kind of need. We need that scrappy guy. And, I'm gonna get so torn when he doesn't come here, which he won't. But he's a good player.
Totally agree. Patience.
Yeah, I mean, there's I feel like Garth, with how he's able to, or how he was able to pretty much go into different markets, and have people that came in and fit the certain style that they wanted to implement in Seattle. And that, like I mentioned earlier, I think that's eventually what's going to happen here. It's just going to be a process where you got rid of all these contracts this year, got rid of your top legend, which, say whatever you want to say, but he wasn't producing at a DP level, and you need that in MLS. It's not like you're playing in the Premier League. This is not even Liga MX, where you don't have a salary cap. It's not the way how MLS works. And hopefully it's the path that they try to take. I'm really, and that's something that I started questioning, probably like halfway through the 2021 season, I think. It was, we always try to go for these high profile, like youngsters or like prospects and try to make money off of it. And I get it, soccer, up to a certain point is a business, but if you want that business to run well, you also got to get results. You got to have the fans engaged into it. You got to have them, wanting to come into the games and all. And that's, I'm not saying, that the fans haven't been there or haven't showed up, because that hasn't been the case. They've fully, had support for the team, even in these 3 mediocre years. And you just have to, like you said it, you have to take 2 steps back to, take 3, 4, where you have to take things, to like baby steps, basically. When you're trying to do stuff like this, especially when there's been so many, contracts. There's been, we've mentioned Eric Lopez, Jurgen Damm, which he's no longer here. Shout outs to him, because I know Tommy would have eventually mentioned him on here at some point or another. But there's many things that have just been from 2019 on to this end of this 2022 year. It was just a mess.
Yeah, no, full credit to the folks who have stuck this out and kept showing up. I mean, it's amazing to look up on that last. Do you remember the last game of the season last year?
I
where
was
it meant
there.
nothing? And people were there,
People
like
showed
James.
up.
I didn't know
It was
why.
packed.
It was crazy, right? And just to see
It was
that, like, this fan base is so deserving of not the last 3 seasons, right?
Yeah.
Which makes the Garth signing all that more like critical, right? Like, because this team needed to fix so many things, right? And they got the right person in, and because it's not as tangible as like a new striker, I don't think people are quite as excited about it necessarily, but they kind of should be. I'm like really optimistic, especially relative to, I think, like the median of the fan base right now.
So Sam, well, kind of going into the comment that Nick Bradley is putting up here, that if for whatever case we miss the playoffs again, Boca Negra will be gone, and Pineda himself, commented Pineda. That, or you think that Garth, the fact that Garth has some type of relationship with him, or that knows him a little better in Seattle, that maybe he has a longer leash, maybe because of the fact that he knows that this is kind of like a rebuild year. They kind of give him, that benefit of the doubt, basically, or that, extra year.
I would be surprised. I'm not sure they classify it as a rebuild year, not yet, and they probably shouldn't. I don't think with the roster they have at this point, and the roster they could have, I guess, if all these signings come in and come through, and everything kind of works out, and there's not like 5 critical injuries all in a row, like last year. But I think maybe people are possibly overvaluing the connection of Garth knowing Gonzalo beforehand. I don't think that will play a big factor in Garth's decisions going forward, because he seems to be so objective and almost robotic about everything he does. If the things aren't clicking that need to be clicking, then he won't have any problem stepping away from Gonzalo Pineda. Here's the thing, though. I just don't think that's going to happen, because I think in general, Gonzalo made some mistakes last year. The number one mistake being starting Rocco Rios Novo for as long as he did.
God, that goal against Orlando.
He got away with that.
That free kick was just hideous.
I didn't know where you were going with that when you started. It could have been so many goals that I was like, what the hell was he doing? That was a mistake. That was a legitimate mistake. And I think there was probably some sense of like Gonzalo didn't want to like ruin that kid's confidence, et cetera, right? Those are things he's going to learn as he gets older and more experienced in this role, right? But if we're talking about coach that the players seem to respect, I think he's got that. If we're talking about a coach whose game model and setup of the way he tries to attack things is extremely solid. I think he's got that too, and can have that even more if the roster pieces fit within that. You know, I've talked to folks kind of around the league, and the two managers that get brought up as far as having a clear and decisive game model, right, and understanding how to effectively implement it. One is Wilfred Nancy, who's had amazing success at CF Montreal, just left for Columbus and a big deal. And the other one is Gonzalo Pineda, right? Like, people really, really respect this guy. There's a reason he got interviews before Atlanta United. There's a reason Atlanta United were interested in bringing him in. You know, Brian Schmetzer speaks extremely highly of him. I just don't see it getting to the point where he needs to be fired. To be very, very surprised. As far as Bocanegra goes, I'm much more curious about that. I'm much more curious because there is that. Obviously, there's a longer track record of mistakes, and there's a longer track record of his department not being set up in the way that it needs to be set up. I did a series on Garth Lockaway for thestriker.com, and one of the quotes that has stood out to me for a while now since I did it was, Garth doesn't suffer fools, right? And if we find out from Garth that Carlos Bocanegra has been quote unquote a fool, you know, I don't think Garth is going to keep him around, you know? So curious to see how that works. Curious to see how those personalities work. I had someone describe it to me, the two personalities as oil and water. Like, how is that going to mix together? How's it going to work? I don't know. It seems to be going fine so far, but let's talk in a year, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we should get rid of Pineda anytime soon because no more manager turnover, you know? And I don't even think, do we even have a Pineda like player who was totally Pineda? I mean,
no,
maybe
I can't say we do.
Not
on
the roster. I know Cisneros was brought in by him, but I mean, other than that,
they were pretty hamstrung at that point, though. There's not a whole lot they could do, you know.
And we still have the lingering Heinze and the Boer guys still hanging around, and it's difficult. A lot of them are merging into, you know, players that will fit into what we want, but it's so difficult. But I just don't want another manager turnover. It's the most difficult time ever.
I think that's a good point. I think it's a really great point. I mean, I've kind of talked about Philadelphia being a team to kind of aspire to, the way they've set up their infrastructure and everything like that. And Zilf is asking about the scouting team. Philadelphia hits on every single signing, just about. Their scouting team is amazing. Atlanta United has obviously not done that with way more money and way more resources. So the scouting team is the biggest issue for me right now, and it seems like they're making steps to fix that. But as far as patience with the manager, Jim Curtin has been there for some really, really bad years in Philadelphia. Now, obviously, Atlanta doesn't want to suffer through those, but Philadelphia got rewarded for sticking with this guy, right? And sticking with the system and sticking with an identity. And I think Pineda can be that guy for the long term. Like, I don't think he's not going anywhere. You know, he's here to set up something long term at Atlanta United. And James, I think you're totally right. Let him be. Let him get through this, and I think things will be better in the long term for that.
I don't think the downsides of De Boer and Heinze and the media and how they interact with players, I don't really see that in Pineda being an issue. And, you know, it's not alarming enough to where you need to find another person to do that.
I totally forgot what I was about to say, but now, you know, with the scouting team and with the academy, I mean, that's something that, you know, I really have not. I've watched some of the games for the twos last year. I think I watched probably like 5 or so, but I really don't keep up with it as much. I know James and so probably keep up with it a little bit more, but the academy, I mean, for Atlanta United, I mean, they're pretty. Yeah, I mean, they have talent. I mean, there's kids on there, you know, Johnny Vial. What's the other one? The goalkeeper from Chile. I forget.
Reyes.
Reyes. I mean, there's so much talent that, you know, could be, you know, eventually brought up to the team. We've seen that with Aidan McFadden, with Caleb Wiley, guys like that, and I definitely think that, you know, the academy can definitely play a big role into what Atlanta wants to be in the upcoming years. They don't essentially have to go out and spend big money. I mean, they can if they have to, but it's not like I mean, you have talent at home where you can have that depth, and still not have to make that big of a signing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a big tenet of Seattle, right? Like, I don't know if y'all remember in the CCL final last year. I forget who scored. It might have been Joe Paulo, but runs over and celebrates with a whole bunch of kids in the front row, and it's the academy kids for Seattle, right? Like, they're that connected. They're like, oh, we're hanging out, and also this player just scored in the biggest game in club history. He's gonna go celebrate with the academy kids, right? So an academy kid, Obed Vargas, was playing in that game, 16 years old. It's about establishing a culture, and Gonzalo Pineda is going to be well aware of that. I thought it was interesting coming to training, the first training of the year. I guess it was Friday or whatever, and seeing the academy kids and the U22 kids, or not the U22, excuse me, the MLS Next Pro kids playing and practicing with the first team, right, and getting that experience and having preseason kind of being encompassing kind of deal. It seemed like a good experience, seemed like a good culture builder. And I think everyone involved kind of understands that, that can be a huge outlet for Atlanta United. And I think we might see the benefits of it some this year. Obviously, we'll see Caleb, right? Caleb will get involved in some way. He's too good not to. But also you have Noah Cobb coming up. Noah Cobb's a homegrown center back, became a homegrown officially on January 1st, but spent a lot of time with US U19s, US U20s, all that kind of thing. Carlos Bocanegra said that he has USMNT center back written all over him. And if there's anything Carlos Bocanegra knows, it's probably that, right? So huge hype for Noah coming up, and he may get some opportunities here. AJ Fortune coming up as a homegrown as well. He's intriguing, not quite as maybe hyped as Noah, but still an intriguing guy as well. I think we're going to start to see the benefits of the academy start to play out real quickly, And it's weird to think about, but those guys were like 12 when the team started. We're that far along at this point.
Yeah, and those kids too. They've just got beat up in the USL all year, and now they get to have so much fun in Next Pro. And if you want to see us contend for a title, you should watch Atlanta United too, because they are going to be cracked next year. And that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, dude, like Alan Carlton, Vial, Meja, Ciabatu, all those guys, they're gonna cook, and it's gonna be a fun season in that. And now I didn't have ESPN Plus last year, so I didn't even watch the twos, but now I can watch them now. So it's gonna be good fun for the twos.
I love it. It'll be interesting to see how they adjust. It'll probably be nice to be not playing against grown men the entire time, like the last few years. Yeah. These poor kids were getting run over, but it'll be a little easier. MLS Next Pro. Zilfax asked a good question. Who's the interim coach for the twos? We don't know yet. They haven't announced anything. We'll find out soon. Jack Collison got announced officially as Huntsville's coach up in Nashville.
That would hurt.
That hurts. He was a good dude and obviously did well within the academy. But name to keep an eye out on. Kevin Kratz was the U16 coach for the last few years. It'd be super interesting to see if they bump him out. Just a totally random guess. I know nothing, but they'll announce that soon.
Yeah, that should be interesting. Is that March? We're saying late March. Is that when that season kicks off?
Yeah, I think they're saying later this year. They don't even really know yet. They're still trying to figure out what's going on with the broadcast and everything like that. So, priorities here at MLS.
Oh boy,
yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Will the first broadcast be great? Probably not, but it'll eventually be excellent. Just be patient.
Speaking of broadcast, what do you think about Apple TV, man? The whole deal that they're doing, with I read some stuff. I read some stuff that they gotta have like certain content, from like the media team, stuff that how the team's involved in the community and all that. There's like a whole lot of stuff that that's the Apple TV is putting like a lot of thought into it, and I think it's great, man. I think that for teams that don't really have that connection between the fans and the team, I think that's what's missing, for for I guess like new fans. But I think that Atlanta United is not in a tough position where we get that sort of content. Probably not
Hmm.
as we did at one point. Probably in the earlier years, but I think that we're one of those teams where we're always like either trolling or somewhat or another. Like other MLS teams.
Yeah,
Like the
no,
one
I'm
that
really
killed the one real quick, sorry Sam, but
yeah.
the one troll that killed me was the Amfam banner when they trolled it and they trolled Mount New York with it.
They actually hung it too. I remember I spent like
Yep.
half a game one time because Atlanta was like losing or something and trying to actually find it, and it was in the stadium, which is really
It was,
really
yeah.
small. Huh.
Yeah, we
But
will
as
probably
far
lose
as
it.
Apple goes, I'm really excited that it is an investment into the core product of MLS, which is the diehard fans, right? Because that is the majority of the base at this point, right? Like the casual base isn't necessarily there, and it probably won't be there for a while, right? Like there's kind of an eye towards like the 2026 World Cup, kind of building that base out and getting people engaged and everything like that. So until then, why not invest in the people that are showing up to the stadium, right? So that's why you have the season ticket holders get an automatic free subscription to everything MLS on the Apple TV Plus thing, right? Which is going to be all the games, no blackouts. You can put on the radio broadcast of your team if you want. So if you want to listen to Jason and Mike while you're watching Atlanta United, you can do that, which is going to be really cool. There's going to be wall-to-wall content, from my understanding, as far as like studio shows and other things like that. I think even the extra time guys may have something going as well within that. So a lot of really interesting and engaging things for the people who are already really, really invested in the team. And I know some folks are like worried, like, oh, well, people can't flip through and like stumble onto MLS anymore. And I'm like, who the hell was doing that? Who the actual hell was going through their cable TV at this point and seeing like the Dynamo play Colorado on a Thursday night, going, yes, me. I'm dedicating my life to that now. It wasn't happening. It's not
Yeah.
happening ever. Ever. It's the fan bases are growing because you can go to the stadium and be a part of a community and everything like that, right? And so this is an investment in that, and I think it's going to pay off long term.
Also, $250 million a year. That is what I'm excited for the clubs and all of that. But it's gonna be an interesting one. Actually, I have the most random question ever, but I want to get out. Do you have any knowledge on the Leagues Cup draw? That's probably not even close to being right now. I totally pulled that.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But like,
I do know Atlanta will be pretty kind of screwed as far as that draw goes.
Yep.
Because they weren't in the top 18 or whatever you had to be in to get
so
like
weird.
slotted. It was really confusing. So it'll probably be like it'll be like Tigres and like LAFC, and we'll be like, oh god, this is miserable. But could be interesting. I don't know. I keep forgetting that's a thing, but I should probably prepare for that, huh?
Yeah.
A whole month.
Once we lose both of those games, then we just get more scheduling for another AmFam Cup or something like that.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. I doubt they'll value it too much this year, to be honest. So maybe next year.
Or it could be a turning point, for Garth. Maybe they could take, that as a challenge, for next year. I mean, take it maybe a little bit more serious, or with other competitions. I mean, I think MLS, like the season, man, is so long to where you're just able to, there's teams where they could be second to fourth place, fifth place, in the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden they stumble and end 11th, 12th place, and vice versa. And that's something that where there's certain short tournaments like U.S. Open Cup, CCL, Leagues Cup. Obviously, that's that's coming up this year. I feel like they can kind of invest more time into it, rather than, or kind of focus more into it rather than something that's 7-8 months long, and just so much happens. You have injuries, you have guys getting having or basically getting suspensions,
Mhm.
stupid things basically. So it's just, I think that eventually Garth, may, take into consideration, hey, take one of these tournaments and, we take that step into CCL. And then, once we get the CCL, we take that as a big priority, which we saw that with Seattle this past year. I mean, they were just terrible after that, but they really put like all emphasis into CCL right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, and you kind of mentioned how long the season is. I think Garth was one of the first people to really figure that out, right? Like that you can just make the playoffs if you're bad for the entire first half of the season, and then you can win MLS Cup by taking, I don't know, 0 shots against Toronto. You can do those things in this league. Like you don't have to be great for the entire year. And so I think that's something we kind of need to be prepared for, especially this first year where the goal is, like James said, it's just make the home playoff game, just get a home playoff game back again, and then you're exactly right. Then the focus can turn to, okay, well, we got that. How do we compete in Leagues Cup? How do we compete in CCL? How do we win all the trophies we feel we're capable of winning because we have the largest fan base in the country?
That should be a very interesting road.
Chris got a good comment here. The fan base is also growing from the watch parties as well. I can't tell you how many fans of the team we've made from random people stumbling into our watch parties that, having the time of their life. Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
think that's
sure.
huge.
Dude, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and there's been times where I've, been out with a buddy that's also an Atlanta United fan, which he actually doesn't live here anymore. He lives up in Greenville, but we used to go out to bars and watch the Atlanta United games, and there'll be times where we'll stumble to, another Atlanta United fans, and we're like, oh, we just start chatting. We're like, like seriously, it's just like how
Oh, cool.
you just mentioned it, like it's one of the biggest fan bases, if not the biggest fan base in the U.S. And you just find them everywhere, man. I mean, there's been times where, I'm part of like some Facebook groups and stuff, and there's people like, commenting where they've seen like an Atlanta United jersey, like in Paris, in Spain, stuff like that, and people recognize it, and you just like, it's like you're a pretty well-known club, and you just hopefully, man, you're able to get the results back to where they can, where they can back you up and say that you have that big club status again.
Exactly right. They deserve better, but
Yeah.
I think they're going to get it. I think everyone's going to get it. If not this year, definitely next year. It's trending the right way. Telling y'all, I'm really optimistic. Like, and I'm not paid to be optimistic. I'm just really.
No, I'm the same way. I mean, once we start cutting off all these guys, like seriously, I think like that dead weight, like the fact that I mean, going back to what we mentioned earlier, MLS, they have the stupid salary cap, and the fact that you were able to cut off all that dead weight, it's like now you're able to somewhat have like a fresh start, and go able to find the right guy, and I think that you have the right guy to be able to do that. The guy that has the right connections, that somebody that knows the league, somebody that has put up, arguably one of the best teams in MLS history, the Sounders for like the past 5 years. I mean, it was between them and Portland, which made Western finals, and I don't know how many years in a row. And I think, you just have to look at as as an example of what Atlanta wants to be, pretty much.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the standard, and they've gotten away from that standard, but there's no reason they can't get back to it.
All right, last question. Will you be in Chattanooga in 9 days?
That's the
Will you be
plan.
there?
That's
There
the
you
plan.
go.
I'll be around. So if anyone sees me, say hey. Better yet, if I'm with my girlfriend, sneak up behind us and really loudly say, "Wow, isn't that guy who was on that podcast?" It will really impress her. So that's the goal.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, James. So if you catch Sam out there,
Yeah,
you
bro.
know what to do, man. All right, Sam, man. It was good talking to you, man. Same with you, James. As I mentioned at the beginning, you can follow James at ATL UTD, James and James at Sam Jones at J_Sam Jones on Twitter. Also, the Fila Sports Podcast. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook as well. And thank you, Sam, for being on here, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all. What y'all do.
Yeah, man. All right, man. I'll catch y'all another time, man.